So this first economic indicator we want to take a look at is gross domestic product, or GDP. So we're going to have a textbook definition of GDP here, and we don't have all the parts quite filled in because there's 4 important parts that we want to point out, and all 4 of them are extremely important into understanding what gross domestic product is. So gross domestic product is the total market value of all final goods and services produced within a country's borders during a 12-month period. So a few things about this. First and foremost, we say it's the total market value. So we're saying whatever these goods and services are, we're taking whatever the selling price is within the economy. Also, they have to be final goods and services. We'll talk about that more in a little bit, but a final good or service is just a good or service in its absolute final state. We don't count it along the way or when it's halfway done. We count it when it's all the way done. Also, it has to be within a country's borders. That means anything that is made on, for example, U.S. soil counts into the United States' GDP. Even if there's a United States company that's producing in another country, we would not include that because it is not on U.S. soil. And then we typically measure GDP across a 12-month period. It's easy to keep track of it when it comes to a year. But again, as we can see, the definition is in the name. Gross, meaning total, domestic, meaning within like your home nation, and product, meaning product. Gross domestic product is just the total products we make within our home country, gross domestic product, right? And GDP is really trying to answer the question, okay, how productive were we this year as a country? We're trying to ask ourselves, okay, with all the resources that our economy had at its fingertips, how did we use them? And what we're saying is, how much money's worth of stuff did we make? And GDP is typically the primary indicator that we use in order to try to understand the health of an economy. If someone was to ask you, how is so-and-so's economy doing for some country, typically the first statistic we point to is gross domestic product. So again, an easy way of thinking of GDP is it's just how much money's worth of stuff did we make in this given year. So the most recent year that we have data from for the United States is the year 2019. And let's ask ourselves, what was the United States' GDP in the year 2019? Well, the GDP of the United States in 2019 was $21,427,100,000,000. That means the U.S. produced $21.427 trillion worth of goods and services within their borders in 2019. That is a whole lot. A trillion is a million millions. And then multiply that by 21, right? That's how much dollars worth of stuff the U.S. made within their borders in 2019. Now, in order to find our GDP, we have this formula for gross domestic product. Now, we're going to go through this formula in more detail in a little bit, but gross domestic product is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. A few things about this gross domestic product. Again, we know what that is, but we're just taking all the different parts of GDP and adding them up. So the C stands for consumer spending. The I stands for investment spending. The G stands for government spending. And the X minus M is our exports minus our imports. You might sometimes see that written as NX for net exports, or X, I should say, X sub N for net exports. But regardless, it's the difference between our exports and our imports. And you also might see GDP sometimes written as our output or just as a capital letter Y. What this is saying is that our gross domestic product is the sum of all of the things produced within our country within a given year.